My fiancé walked away from me just days before our wedding, shattering me into pieces and leaving me desperate. With nowhere else to turn, I took a position as a live-in nurse for a paralyzed billionaire. But on my very first night, I froze, paralyzed myself, by what I witnessed. I had gone to William's mother's house, believing we were meeting to finalize the wedding seating arrangements. Instead, Victoria Peaton opened the door, draped in my grandmother's pearl necklace, the very heirloom William swore had mysteriously gone missing last month. Behind her, scattered across the coffee table, lay my wedding invitations, my name slashed out in red ink, replaced neatly with hers. "Linda," she greeted me, a predator's smile curling on her lips. "William thought it would be easier if I explained the situation to you." That necklace was the only inheritance I had left from my grandmother, the single priceless thing she entrusted to me before cancer claimed her life when I was 12. William had known its story. He'd held me through the tears, even helped me file the police report when it supposedly disappeared. Now it gleamed coldly against Victoria Peaton's throat, as if it had always belonged to her, catching the sparkle of the crystal chandelier in his mother's grand foyer. "Where's William?" I asked, my voice sounding steadier than the trembling hands I pressed tightly against my purse to keep from betraying me. "He's upstairs with Mother Hamilton reviewing the prenuptial agreement." "Well, our prenuptial agreement." Victoria stepped aside with the grace of someone already claiming a crown, motioning for me to enter as if she owned every home William's family touched. "Come in. We have so much to discuss." The living room still bore fragments of me, the Christmas throw pillows I had chosen, yet everything else screamed foreign, hostile, conquered. Eleanor, William's mother, sat in her wingback chair, sipping tea from the china set she had once declared too precious for my hands. Beside her lounged Marcus Peaton himself, the pharmaceutical titan whose fortune kept half the city's hospitals alive. "Linda," Eleanor said coolly, not bothering to rise, not offering even the fragile pretense of kindness she'd forced through the past 4 years. "This is for the best. You must see that." 3 weeks. Just 3 weeks from the wedding, I had spent a year painstakingly planning. Every flower, every song, every seating chart. And here they sat, assembled like a tribunal, to deliver the verdict of my replacement. The invitations I had hand-addressed, because Eleanor insisted it displayed proper breeding, now littered the coffee table like discarded evidence. My name, Linda Marie Carter, was violently crossed out in blood-red ink, and above it, in bold letters, Victoria Peaton had been written as if destiny itself had chosen her. "William and I have been working closely on the Peaton Medical Technology Initiative," Victoria said smoothly, easing herself onto the very sofa where I'd spent countless Sunday dinners chasing scraps of Eleanor's approval. "Our partnership evolved naturally. These things happen." "These things happen?" My voice cracked, splintering at last. "We live together. We have a venue booked. We have a life." "Had?" William's voice cut in from the stairway. He descended slowly, each step deliberate, carrying a manila folder identical to the ones he used for patient discharge papers. Even now, 3 weeks before our wedding, he wore the Tom Ford suit I had given him to celebrate his promotion to attending physician. He looked exactly like the man I had fallen in love with, save for his eyes. Those were gone. Cold, flat, unrecognizable. "Everything's been arranged," he said, placing the folder beside our defaced invitations as if filing away another case. "The apartment lease transfers to me next week. Your belongings will be packed and stored by professionals. The wedding venue has been notified, though we're keeping the date for different purposes." Different purposes. My stomach clenched. They were keeping our wedding date. For their wedding. The realization hit like a blow to the chest, and I had to cling to the doorframe just to remain standing. "The ring," Eleanor said coolly, her gaze fixed on the diamond that glimmered at my finger. His grandmother's heirloom, the promise I had carried for 18 months. It must remain in the family. My hand instinctively curled over it, but William was already extending his own, calm and certain, as though this were merely another clinical exchange. "Linda, please don't make this harder than it has to be," he said in that careful, detached tone he reserved for uncooperative patients. "The relationship has run its course. Victoria and I share professional goals, family ties, and a vision for the future that aligns more naturally." "When?" The question tore from me before I could stop it, raw and desperate. "When did you decide this?" Victoria laughed, a brittle, sparkling sound like champagne flutes shattering on marble. "Oh, darling, these things aren't really decided. They simply become clear. If you must know, William and I have been working together for about 2 months on the neural interface project." 2 months. My mind reeled back through every lie dressed as duty. The late-night calls that were supposedly emergency surgeries, the weekend conferences that suddenly appeared on his schedule, the mysterious charges on our joint credit card for restaurants I'd never set foot in. The evidence had always been there, written in a language of betrayal I'd been too naive, too trusting, to decipher. "Your morning routines were always so predictable," William said, his tone clinical, his diagnosis of my life together with him sharper than any scalpel. 5:30 a.m. Wake up, breakfast at 6 ba, the same rotation of meals, the same conversations about hospital politics. He paused, his gaze slicing into me. The same everything. With hands that no longer felt like mine, I slid the ring free. The heirloom diamond glinted in protest before I set it down on Eleanor's side table. It landed with a faint click beside her teacup, a fragile little sound that somehow echoed louder than my breaking heart. "The storage unit key will be couriered to Dorothy Martinez's address," William continued, scrolling through his phone as if I were just another task to be ticked off his list. "I assumed you'd go there. You always do when things get difficult." Dorothy. My foster mother. The only family I'd ever truly had. To William, she was nothing more than a calculated endpoint, another line in the map of my ruin. He had charted every turn of my collapse, right down to where I'd seek shelter. "Is there anything else?" I asked, surprising myself with how steady, how cold my voice sounded. Marcus Peaton rose, smoothing his Italian suit jacket, his presence as deliberate as a closing door. "There is the matter of discretion. The medical community is small. We'd prefer this transition occur without unnecessary drama. A clean break benefits everyone, especially your daughter's reputation," I said, my eyes locking on Victoria. After all, taking another woman's fiancé 3 weeks before the wedding might raise questions about her character. Victoria's smile sharpened, all teeth and triumph. "Oh, Linda, no one's taking anyone. People simply end up where they belong. William belongs in a different circle now. Surely even you can understand that." The cruelty was surgical, precise, intentional. They hadn't just ended my relationship. They'd gathered to excise me from their world entirely, ensuring I understood my place. Or rather, my absence of one. The pearl necklace glinting at Victoria's throat seemed to throb with my grandmother's heartbreak, another generation of dreams strangled by those who could afford to steal them. "The hospital schedule has been adjusted," William added, because even in betrayal he never overlooked logistics. "You won't be covering my surgical shifts anymore. Dr. Harrison has agreed to reassign you to the night rotation in pediatric care, less chance of awkward encounters." They had thought of everything: my home, my career, my dignity, each piece of my life excised with the precision of a scalpel, leaving nothing but empty space where I had once belonged. I stood in Eleanor Hamilton's living room, the very space where I had once decorated Christmas pillows, now transformed into a theater of my undoing. Every face around me reflected satisfaction, as if my erasure were a triumph to be savored. "If that's everything," I said, summoning the last brittle fragments of my spine, "I'll be going." "One more thing," Victoria called, her hand grazing the pearls with slow, deliberate arrogance. "These really are exquisite. William has such good taste." The door shut behind me with a muted click, yet it reverberated like a final sentence. 3 weeks before my wedding, I stood on Eleanor Hamilton's porch stripped of everything: ring, home, fiancé, and still unaware that this execution was also my liberation. The drive blurred. 20 minutes behind the wheel, my hands locked on the steering wheel tight enough to leave dents in the leather. 20 minutes to accept that my life had been carved out from under me while I was still breathing. The apartment garage greeted me with its harsh fluorescent flicker, buzzing like an interrogation lamp. I pulled into my spot, the one beside William's empty space where his BMW usually gleamed. Of course, it wasn't there. He was at Victoria's penthouse, no doubt, lifting a glass of champagne that cost more than my monthly student loan payment, toasting the efficiency of my disposal. The apartment was too quiet when I stepped inside, the kind of silence that felt staged, like a crime scene scrubbed clean after the body was removed. Every photo frame still hung where I'd left it, but the smiles inside them felt counterfeit now, their glassy eyes mocking me. I dropped my purse on the counter, the sound unnaturally loud in the hollow air, and sank into the couch we'd picked out together. I remembered how William had insisted on leather because it was practical. I'd argued for fabric because it was warm. He'd won, as he always did, and I'd convinced myself compromise was love. Now the leather was cold beneath me. The manila folder on Eleanor's coffee table replayed in my mind like a courtroom exhibit. My life itemized, reassigned, boxed up, and sent away. And all of it had been discussed in advance, in boardrooms and over champagne, like a merger acquisition. I stared at the engagement ring-shaped indentation on my finger, skin pale where the diamond had once rested. My hand felt foreign, incomplete, yet lighter in a way that terrified me. For the first time since the tribunal had passed their judgment, the tears came. Hot, furious, and soundless. They burned as they carved tracks down my face, but even they felt like part of the cleansing, like something inside me breaking open, making room for whatever came next. Because there would be a next. The soft glow of the city lights filtered through the blinds, striping the room with fractured gold. Somewhere out there, William and Victoria were toasting my erasure. But somewhere out there, too, was a version of me they hadn't accounted for, the one who could survive being cut open and left for dead. And survival, I realized, was the one skill they hadn't stripped from me. "Victoria and I share something you and I never could," he said, and for the first time that night, his voice carried emotion. Not regret, not sorrow, excitement. "Her father's connections will fast-track my career in ways that would otherwise take decades. The department chair position is essentially guaranteed by 35. The Peton Medical Technology Initiative will revolutionize spinal surgery. This is bigger than personal feelings." "Our wedding is in 3 weeks," I said, the words slipping out automatically, hollow and useless. "Was," he corrected without hesitation. "And that date will serve a different purpose now. The venue was too good to waste." The efficiency of his cruelty knocked the breath from my lungs. He had transferred our wedding to Victoria as casually as rescheduling a patient, swapping brides like moving pieces on a surgical board. "I need the ring back," he said, nodding toward my hand. "You already gave it to your mother," I replied flatly. "The one you were wearing." "Grandmother's original setting," he clarified. He was right. After the tribunal at his mother's house, I'd switched to the old heirloom setting I'd once worn before Eleanor insisted on modernizing it. My last act of defiance, clinging to this one relic of our history. But William knew me too well. He always had. Even my rebellions were predictable. My fingers trembled as I worked the platinum band free. It slipped, clattering against the granite countertop with a sharp crack, like a judge's gavel delivering sentence. For a fleeting moment, I wanted to hurl it at his head. Instead, I placed it carefully beside the envelope, as though surrendering evidence. "Thank you for your clarity," I said. My voice scraped my throat raw. William pocketed the ring with the same absent-minded gesture he used for his phone, already stripping it of meaning. He even checked his watch, as though I were nothing more than a delay in his evening schedule. "I have rounds," he said, striding toward the door. "I suggest you pack efficiently. The movers won't wait if you're not ready." The door clicked shut behind him. Soft. Final. The echo of it threaded through the apartment. Our apartment. Now reduced to 6 borrowed days of tenancy. I stood frozen in the living room, rooted in place while minutes or hours bled together. Time no longer mattered. Only silence did. At last, moving on autopilot, I crossed into our bedroom. Drawers yawned open under my hands, closets spilled fabric I no longer recognized as mine. And so began the archaeology of betrayal, excavating the ruins of a life I'd built, one artifact at a time. Every drawer I opened was another incision, another revelation of betrayal. Restaurant receipts from Marques's, the place we'd chosen for our rehearsal dinner, dated weeks ago. Charges for 2. A Parker pen stamped with Peyton Pharmaceuticals hidden in his sock drawer. Victoria's business card tucked inside his medical journal, its corners softened from being handled too often. The closet loomed like a gallery of accusations. My wedding dress hung there in silence. Vera Wang ivory silk, a fortune I'd excused because you only get married once. The tag still dangled, the receipt in my name alone. William had insisted I choose whatever dress I wanted. Now I understood. He hadn't been generous. He'd been strategic. The debt would follow me, not him. I dragged the suitcases down from the top shelf and began folding my life into neat compartments. Every item was shrapnel. The blue dress I'd worn to his white coat ceremony, the fleece pajamas he'd bought that first cold winter in this apartment, the jewelry box containing the pearl earrings he'd given me last Christmas. New, he'd claimed. Now I saw them for what they were, Victoria's discards, repackaged as gifts. By the door, I found the boxes. Pre-labeled, Eleanor's flawless penmanship slicing through me like glass. Linda, kitchen items. Linda, personal documents. Linda, miscellaneous. She had prepared for my erasure weeks ago, maybe longer. 4 years of my life reduced to inventory tags, evidence neatly sorted for removal. At 2 a.m., I opened my laptop and faced the numbers. Checking account, $247.83. Wedding deposits. Venue, photographer, florist, catering, $15,000. Non-refundable, all of it, per the contracts William had urged me to sign quickly before someone else grabbed the dates. My credit cards were maxed. Bridesmaids' gifts, the engagement party, honeymoon flights I'd booked as a surprise. My old apartment lease had expired 6 weeks ago. William had told me it was pointless to keep paying for a place I never used. Every financial decision had been choreographed, every string pulled, until nothing remained but empty accounts and debts with my name on them. By 3 a.m., I sat on the cold marble floor of the lobby, surrounded by Eleanor's boxes. Linda, Linda, Linda. Like evidence waiting to be catalogued. A crime scene where the only body missing was mine. Scrolling through apartment listings felt like trying to read a foreign language. Studio apartment. First and last month required. Credit check mandatory. Each entry was another door slammed shut before I could even raise my hand to knock. My phone screen blurred, not from exhaustion, but from tears I refused to let fall. And then, her name appeared. Dorothy Martinez. the last person I had spoken to before my entire world collapsed. My thumb hovered over her number for a full minute, shame and pride wrestling inside me, until desperation finally won. She answered on the second ring, her voice steady, clear, warm despite the hour. "Linda, what's wrong, sweetheart?" The sob that broke free told her everything words could not. "Can I come over?" I whispered. "I'm already putting the kettle on." Dorothy's townhouse waited on a quiet street shaded by oak trees, the kind of place where neighbors still knew each other's names. She opened the door before I could even knock, wearing the same flannel nightgown she'd worn the night she first welcomed me into her home 15 years ago. Without a word, she helped me carry boxes into the spare room, the one with Noah's Ark wallpaper that had borne silent witness to a dozen wounded foster children before me. The air smelled of lavender sachets and old books, exactly as I remembered. A new quilt lay folded neatly across the twin bed, the price tag freshly torn away, but its corners still visible. On the nightstand stood a photo of my nursing school graduation, Dorothy glowing with pride beside me in my cap and gown. She had prepared this room for me before I'd even known I would need it. "Tea first, explanations later," she said, guiding me into the kitchen where copper pots hung from their hooks, and jars of herbs lined the windowsill like sentinels. From the cupboard she pulled out my mug, the chipped blue one she'd claimed for me when I was 13. The hairline crack had never leaked, just like Dorothy. The chamomile tea tasted like safety. Like all the nights she'd stayed awake with me through foster care nightmares, teenage heartbreaks, and every jagged chapter in between. "William left me for Victoria Peaton," I said at last, the words dropping heavy, stone by stone into the quiet between us. "The wedding's off. I have nowhere to go." Dorothy didn't gasp. She didn't rush to fill the silence with empty comfort. She simply opened her arms and I collapsed into them, sobbing into her nightgown while she rocked me the way she had comforted every wounded child who'd ever crossed her threshold. Through my tears, I noticed the small things: her refrigerator stocked with my favorite strawberry yogurt, a brand I hadn't mentioned in years, a new purple toothbrush waiting in the bathroom, my color, always. She had prepared for me, as if she'd sensed this would come, though she had prayed it wouldn't. "Stay as long as you need," she whispered into my hair. "This is your home. It always has been." For 3 days, I lived inside a grief cocoon. I barely left the guest room except when Dorothy coaxed me to the table, insisting I eat. She never pried for details or forced advice. She simply placed bowls of soup in front of me, sat nearby with her knitting, and let me drown in silence while I scrolled through endless job listings I couldn't afford to take. My savings were a joke. The hospital, already complicit in William's scheme, had reassigned me to night shifts in pediatrics, carefully orchestrated so we'd never meet in the same hallway. On the third evening, Dorothy knocked softly before entering, carrying tea and a manila folder. "My cousin Marjorie called from Hartman Placement Agency," she said, her tone measured. "There's a position that's been open for months. It's unusual." She placed the folder on my bed. One glance at the compensation line made me blink twice. $15,000 a month, plus accommodations, meals, full benefits, more than triple my hospital salary. "What's the catch?" I asked, because there was always a catch. "The patient is Nathaniel Blackwood." Dorothy's expression shifted, careful, cautious. "The tech billionaire. He had that skiing accident 8 months ago. He's paralyzed. And he's difficult. 4 nurses have quit in the last 2 months. One lasted 3 days." I recognized the name instantly from the business headlines William used to read aloud at breakfast. Nathaniel Blackwood, the wunderkind who built a medical technology empire before the age of 35. 35, the same milestone William now planned to conquer with the Peatons' help. "They say he's impossible," Dorothy went on, angry, isolated, alone in that mansion of his up in Westfield Heights. potentially violent in his frustration. She paused, her eyes searching mine. But Linda, the money would set you up for life. 6 months there, and you could start over anywhere. Running away, that's what this was. But staying meant suffocating in William and Victoria's shadow, condemned to the night shift graveyard he'd arranged for me, forced to breathe in a city where every corner was a reminder of what I'd lost. So I picked up the folder and dialed the number before doubt could stop me. The interview was set for the next morning at Margaret Harrison's downtown office. The building's lobby gleamed with marble that whispered of old money. The elevator carried me to the 42nd floor so smoothly it felt like ascending into another world. Margaret's office looked carved from ice, glass and steel, clean lines and cutting edges. She herself matched the decor. Steel gray hair pulled so tightly into a bun it seemed to sculpt her features, her charcoal suit pressed with military precision. "Miss Carter," she said, without rising, her hand flicking toward the chair across from her immaculate glass desk. "I've reviewed your credentials. 5 years of nursing, trauma specialization, excellent references from Helena General. Tell me why you want this position." "I need to disappear," I said. The honesty startled even me. My life here has become untenable. Her eyes, sharp as scalpels, studied me. Personal crisis? Financial trouble? Legal issues? "My fiancé left me for Victoria Peaton 3 weeks before our wedding," I said, my voice steady now from sheer exhaustion. "I have no home, no savings, and no desire to remain in the same city where they're building their empire." Something flickered in her expression, so brief I almost doubted it. But the name Peaton had landed. "The Peatons?" she asked. "Do you have any ongoing connection to that family?" "Only that they destroyed my life." Silence stretched between us, cold and heavy, until Margaret slid a contract across the desk. "Mr. Blackwood requires absolute discretion. No visitors to the estate. No personal calls during duty hours. No discussion of his condition or recovery with anyone. Ever. He is brilliant, bitter. He will test every boundary you have. He does not tolerate pity, sentiment, or weakness. Can you handle that?" I thought of William dissecting our love like a cadaver. Eleanor's boxes labeled with my name like evidence tags. Victoria draped in my grandmother's pearls. I can handle anything that doesn't involve the life I just lost. "Sign here." I didn't read the fine print. I didn't ask about the 4 nurses who had fled before me. I didn't question why Margaret Harrison's gaze looked like it recognized pain too well. I simply signed. The pen scratched across the paper with the finality of a gavel. A door closing on one life, swinging open onto another. The next morning, a black town car idled at Dorothy's curb. She hugged me tight, slipped a photo of us into my hand, and whispered, "You're stronger than you know." The drive to Westfield Heights stretched an hour, each mile peeling me further from the life I'd known. The houses grew with the distance, first stately, then sprawling, until they weren't homes at all but estates, compounds, kingdoms fortified by gates and walls. The Blackwood estate appeared like a fever dream at the end of the road. All glass and steel angles, a fortress of light and shadow that rejected the softness of the hills around it. The gates opened without sound, revealing a driveway that coiled through gardens so meticulously cut and arranged they seemed less alive than engineered. Margaret waited at the entrance, her expression still cut from ice. "Your suite is in the east wing," she said, her heels barely whispering on the marble as she led me through long corridors where our footsteps somehow echoed despite the thick carpeting. "You'll have privacy, but remain accessible. Mr. Blackwood's rooms are directly adjacent." The suite was larger than any apartment I could ever afford. Floor-to-ceiling windows opening onto a valley that looked like a world detached from mine, a king-sized bed dressed in immaculate white, a sitting area that belonged in a design magazine, A bathroom with a soaking tub so vast it seemed obscene. It was beautiful. It was cold. And it felt like a gilded prison. Margaret handed me a key card, a pager, and a final warning. "He'll test you immediately. Don't take it personally." Then she left me alone with the silence and the weight of her words. I set my single suitcase on the floor, the pager heavy in my pocket, and crossed to the mahogany door that connected my suite to Nathaniel Blackwood's rooms. The door loomed like a border. One life behind me, another waiting beyond. I knocked twice. Nothing. Margaret's voice echoed in my head, "Don't wait for permission." So I turned the handle and stepped inside. The room stole my breath. Windows stretched floor to ceiling across the western wall, the late afternoon sun pouring molten gold over everything it touched. Black and gray furniture cut stark, modern lines against the light. Art lined the walls. Real art, not prints. I recognized a Rothko, and in this house, there was no doubt it was genuine. Wealth spoke from every detail. But beneath the opulence lurked something darker. Isolation, a life suspended mid-breath. Nathaniel Blackwood sat with his back to me, his wheelchair angled toward the windows. His shoulders were tense beneath a black sweater, every line of his body broadcasting command even in stillness. The air seemed thinner in his presence. I cleared my throat. He didn't turn. His voice cut through the light, sharp and dismissive. "Another one. Margaret's getting desperate if she's pulling from the discount bin now." The casual cruelty might have pierced me once, but after the past week, after being systematically dismantled by people I loved, I found myself immune. Instead of flinching, I stepped further into the room, each footfall deliberate on the polished hardwood. "I'm Linda Carter, your new nurse." Nathaniel spun his wheelchair with startling speed, and in that instant, I understood why the others had fled. He was beautiful, dangerously so. Dark hair brushing his collar, storm-gray eyes that looked forged from winter skies, cheekbones sharp enough to wound. But beauty turned to weaponry in his expression. Disdain radiated from him like heat, the kind of contempt that only came when pain hardened into armor. "Tell me," he said, his voice cultured and sharp as fractured glass, "what tragedy sent you running to this position? Divorce? Death? Financial ruin? Or are you one of those noble types who believes tending to the broken will patch the holes in your own empty life?" "My fiancé left me for Victoria Peaton 3 weeks before our wedding." The words fell flat, stripped of emotion. "So yes, I'm here because I have nowhere else to go. But I'm also here because I'm excellent at my job. And frankly, Mr. Blackwood, your bitterness doesn't intimidate me." Something flickered across his face. Surprise? Recognition? Whatever it was, it fractured his disdain for the briefest moment. His eyes studied me, storm to storm, and I refused to look away. "Victoria Peaton," he repeated slowly. "Marcus Peaton's daughter, the pharmaceutical princess." "The same. And you're what? Looking for revenge? Planning to steal medications or just hiding from the spectacle of your humiliation?" "I'm here to work. Your emotional state isn't my concern, unless it interferes with your medical care." He laughed then, a sound like glass shattering. "My emotional state? How clinical. Did they teach you that line in nursing school, or did you pick it up from whatever man decided you weren't worth keeping?" The words should have cut. But William had already spent my ability to feel that particular pain. I opened my tablet instead. "Your medication schedule shows you're due for evening doses in an hour. I'll need to conduct a full assessment first. Vitals, range of motion, skin integrity." "I refuse." "That's your right. I'll document your non-compliance." "You'll leave." "They all leave." He rolled closer, the wheelchair whispering against the floor. Up close, I saw the truth behind his cruelty, the exhaustion threading his posture, the lines of pain tightening his jaw. 3 days, he said flatly. That's my bet. You'll last 3 days before running back to whatever life you're trying to escape. Your last nurse lasted 6, I countered, scanning the files. She cried on day 2. I don't cry anymore. That's been trained out of me. Our first examination became a duel. He fought every step, refused assessments, challenged my procedures, peppered me with questions designed to expose weakness. But I'd spent 5 years in trauma care, sparring daily with surgeons who tested nurses for sport. I met each attack with calm precision, every answer clipped and certain. Your blood pressure is elevated, I said, slipping the cuff free. Pain level is irrelevant. I'll document it as severe then. You don't get to assume. Silent suffering is still suffering, Mr. Blackwood. And untreated pain impedes recovery. He went silent at that, studying me with an unreadable expression. Finally, as I set out his evening medications, he said, almost to himself, You're not crying yet. That's unusual. That night, sleep refused me. The mansion's silence pressed in from every side, thick and suffocating, as if the walls themselves were listening. My suite's luxury felt alien. After Dorothy's modest guest room, after the apartment I'd shared with William, after all the small lived-in places of my life. This was comfort sharpened into sterility. By 2 a.m. I surrendered. I slipped into the hall, determined to map this glass fortress I now inhabited. The east wing stretched on longer than geometry should have allowed, lined with doors to rooms I had no reason to enter. But then I heard it. Sound where silence should reign, the scrape of metal, the ragged cadence of labored breathing. It came from behind a door marked private, but privacy had been buried with my old life. I pushed it open. The gym beyond could have belonged to a world-class rehabilitation center. Treadmills with harnesses, parallel bars, resistance machines. And there, between the bars, stood Nathaniel Blackwood. Stood. His arms shook as they gripped the rails, his t-shirt clinging dark with sweat. His legs, his supposedly paralyzed legs, bore weight. One step, agonized. Another. His face was a war zone of pain and defiance. He felt me before he saw me. His head snapped up, fury erupting in his eyes like a volcanic breach. "Get out!" he snarled. "Get out now!" But I recognized it. The rage wasn't about me. It was about being seen at all. It was the same raw need I'd felt when boxing up my life, when signing contracts blind, when fleeing here to disappear. "How long have you been hiding this?" I asked softly. "Leave." "No. Or I'll have security escort you out. Your medical files say paralysis from T6 down, but you're bearing weight. You're taking steps." He collapsed back into the wheelchair with practiced precision, chest heaving. "My medical files say what I want them to say. Why hide recovery? This is incredible progress." His laugh was jagged, bitter. "Because the moment people hear there's hope, they demand miracles. Full recovery. Now. And when the progress slows, when it fails, they lose patience. They walk away." His voice dropped, stripped bare. "Everyone leaves." The words hung in the sterile air, fragile and sharp. He was still breathing hard, his sweat-slicked hands clenched on the wheels. I stood, processing the truth he'd just given me, truth that sounded too much like my own. I wanted to tell him I understood, that abandonment carved wounds that never closed, but headlights sliced across the gym windows. Engines growled in the driveway. Multiple vehicles pulling up before 7 a.m. Nathaniel's face hardened, any trace of vulnerability sealed behind granite. "Get my chair positioned by the window," he ordered, his tone absolute. "And you need to disappear. Service hallway. Now." Through the gym's narrow window, I caught the convoy pulling up to the mansion. Black sedans, gleaming like predators. The vanity plate on the lead car froze my blood. PMBB Sewo Saiwan. That's Marcus Peaton's car, I whispered. Nathaniel was already sliding into his wheelchair with mechanical efficiency, erasing all signs of the progress I'd just witnessed. He's early. The meeting wasn't supposed to be until 9. His eyes cut toward me. You know him. His daughter stole my fiancé. Something flared in Nathaniel's storm-gray gaze, dangerous, sharp, but there was no time to dissect it. The intercom crackled, Margaret's voice composed but edged with warning. Mr. Blackwood, your morning appointments have arrived. They're requesting immediate audience. I slipped into the service hallway as instructed, but instead of retreating to safety, I let curiosity anchor me. I found a vantage point behind a servant's door, just wide enough to peer into the main reception room. What I saw nearly buckled my knees. Marcus Peaton entered first, radiating power like an occupying force. 2 lawyers flanked him, their briefcases heavy with unspoken threats. His assistant, a nervous young man, immediately began rearranging furniture, transforming the space into a corporate battlefield. Then Victoria swept in, cream suit tailored to perfection, every inch calculated elegance. Even through the door crack, her perfume reached me. French, expensive, aggressive. But it was the final figure who gutted me. William. Armani suit, medical briefcase, a confidence in his stride I had never seen in 4 years of shared life. He moved like a man reborn in the Piton's orbit, playing a role that revealed the truth. Perhaps this was who he'd always been, simply waiting for the right audience. Margaret wheeled Nathaniel in with deliberate slowness, his blanket arranged to showcase fragility. The transformation was surgical. Gone was the man fighting to walk between parallel bars, replaced by someone broken, vacant, slumped. Nathaniel, Marcus boomed with counterfeit warmth. You're looking well. Marcus. Nathaniel's voice was flat, thinned into weakness. This is unexpected. William stepped forward, hand extended in polished sympathy that made bile rise in my throat. Mr. Blackwood, I'm Dr. William Morris. I've been consulting on your case for the Peaton Medical Division. Your progress reports make for fascinating reading. From my hiding place, I watched Nathaniel accept the handshake. The same hand that had once worn my engagement ring had once sworn vows it never intended to keep. Nathaniel's face remained unreadable, but under the blanket, his other fist clenched white. I wasn't aware my medical records were being shared, he said. William's smile was smooth, practiced. The Peaton Foundation has a vested interest in spinal cord injury research. With the right resources behind it, your case could change thousands of lives. Marcus sank into Nathaniel's favorite chair without asking, an alpha move that landed heavy in the room. Let's skip the pleasantries, he said. You have technology that could revolutionize treatment. We have the infrastructure to bring it to market. Your condition makes active leadership difficult. My condition doesn't affect my intellectual property rights, Nathaniel countered, voice calm but sharpened like a blade. Victoria laughed, that brittle, tinkling sound that made my teeth ache. Of course not, but it does affect your ability to develop and implement. Daddy's offer is generous considering... Considering what? Margaret's voice cut from her post behind Nathaniel's chair, calm but edged. Considering that Mr. Blackwood's recovery has plateaued, William interjected smoothly, already opening his medical briefcase. He spread files across the table that had no right to exist, pages of falsehood dressed as fact. According to my assessment, the paralysis is permanent. Motor function below T6 shows no potential for improvement. The board must ask whether someone in this condition can effectively lead a medical technology company. Every syllable was a lie. Less than an hour ago, I had watched Nathaniel force his body to take steps. My hands shook with rage, nails biting into my palms as William dismantled his own oath for profit. Through the serving window that connected the kitchen to the reception room, Nathaniel's eyes met mine for the briefest moment. Storm gray, steady. He had heard everything. He understood exactly what William was doing. Marcus leaned forward, spreading contracts across Nathaniel's coffee table like an invading general laying out his campaign. The terms are simple. We acquire your patents for $15 million. A fair price, given your inability to develop them further. You retain a ceremonial position, of course. Everyone wins. $15 million for technology worth 10 times that, Nathaniel replied, his voice deceptively mild. Worth that much in the right hands, Marcus corrected smoothly. Your hands, unfortunately, aren't what they used to be. I forced myself back into the kitchen, clinging to my training. If they wanted service, I would serve. And listen. I polished the silver coffee service, every movement controlled, even while my pulse thundered. When I re-entered through the staff door, William didn't even glance at me. I had already ceased to exist in his world the moment I stopped being useful. Your coffee, Mr. Peaton, I said, my voice carefully neutral. Victoria's eyes flicked over me, dismissive, as if I were furniture. I retreated to the pass-through, arranging trays, watching through the cut glass window as the predators circled their prey. The offshore structures are already in place, Victoria said casually, examining her manicure as though discussing the weather. The Cayman accounts can receive the patent transfers within days. And if I refuse? Nathaniel asked. Marcus's smile was glacial. Then we proceed with the competency hearing. Dr. Morris's testimony about your permanent incapacity will be compelling. The board would have no choice but to install alternative leadership. He didn't bother to lower his voice as he turned to his lawyers. He's too broken to fight back. The board will side with active leadership over a man who can't even stand. My hands trembled so violently I nearly dropped the silver coffee pot. Rage seared my chest. These people, William included, were carving Nathaniel open just as they had carved me, stripping him of everything while he was most vulnerable. Through the serving window, Nathaniel's eyes locked with mine again. This time, the contact wasn't accidental. He held my gaze, and in the storm-gray depths I saw my own fury mirrored back at me. Silence stretched after Marcus Peaton's final threat, a silence so heavy it felt like the mansion itself was holding its breath. When the convoy finally departed, leaving behind the stink of cologne and cruelty, Nathaniel dropped the facade. He drove his wheelchair toward his study with violent precision, fury radiating from every line of his body. I followed, pulled by the gravity of his rage. They brought your ex-fiancé to assess me, he said, his voice low and dangerous. To lie about my condition. William's always been good at lying, I answered, bitterness threading my words. I just didn't see it until too late. Nathaniel turned then, facing me fully. Something in his expression had shifted, steel giving way to calculation. Tell me everything. About him. About Victoria. When it started. We sat across from one another in his study, the desk between us strewn with the contracts Marcus had left behind like a battlefield map. William started changing 2 months ago, I said. Late nights that weren't surgeries, weekend conferences that didn't exist. I thought he was just stressed about the wedding. 2 months ago, Nathaniel repeated, his tone dangerous in its precision. That's when they first approached me with a buyout. When I refused, they began planning alternatives, removing me, neutralizing witnesses to William's ethical violations. They orchestrated your abandonment to clear the path. His hands gripped the armrests like he could crush them. They weaponized your pain. Later that night, during stretching exercises, my last professional boundary broke. The timeline matches, I whispered, guiding his arm. Every dinner William missed, every excuse. He was plotting this with them. Nathaniel's hand stilled over mine, his grip hot against my wrist. "William Morris," he said darkly. "I should have connected it sooner. He's been feeding them my medical data for months." "They think you're weak," I told him. "They have no idea what you're capable of." His reply was quiet, lethal. "Then they've forgotten who I was, and they have no idea who you are." From that night, his study became our war room. Margaret slipped us access codes she had no business having, and together we began digging. I unearthed William's messages with Victoria, emails going back 4 months. Removing obstacles, one read, dated 2 weeks before he ended our engagement. My removal had been scheduled like a surgery. Nathaniel traced shell companies buried in Cayman accounts, intricate scaffolding meant to smuggle his patents into Peyton hands. But the worst discovery came in an email from Marcus himself to his lawyers. "The crippled genius is ripe for harvesting. His nurse seems compliant. No complications expected." "Compliant," I repeated, the word tasting like poison. "They have no idea," Nathaniel said. And when our fingers brushed reaching for the same page, neither of us pulled away. 2 weeks before the board meeting, everything changed. At 4 a.m., Nathaniel walked, 20 steps in a row, without the bars, balancing only on a cane. Triumph lit his face, and something inside me cracked open. Tears came, not of grief, but of fierce joy, hot and unstoppable. He caught my hand, anchoring me, his gaze locked on mine. "We're going to destroy them," he vowed. But the way his thumb brushed over my knuckles promised something more than vengeance. That morning, he dressed in his Tom Ford suit, the uniform of war. As he practiced walking in the mirrored study, I adjusted his shoulders, steadying him, our bodies close enough that I could breathe in his cologne, cedar and steel. Determination distilled into scent. From the doorway, Margaret watched. Her expression was unreadable, yet something in her eyes suggested approval, as though she had been waiting for this moment all along. Patricia Coleman arrived the next morning with 3 associates, transforming the dining room into a war room of polished wood and sharpened law. She was in her 60s, silver hair framing eyes that had watched titans topple and never once flinched. Her team spread documents across the table like an arsenal, dissecting every weak joint in the Peyton's armor. "Dr. Morris violated HIPAA no fewer than 6 times, Patricia said, her pen gliding across highlighted passages. "Victoria's stock movements constitute insider trading, and Marcus, this attempted theft is so blatant it's practically insulting." "Can we prove intent?" I asked. Patricia's smile was predatory, all teeth. "With what you've gathered, I could prove intent, conspiracy, and attempted corporate murder. Metaphorically speaking." When she asked about my role, Nathaniel answered before I could. "She's my partner in this." The word partner hung between us, weighted, layered. Patricia's gaze flicked between us, measuring something unspoken. Then she nodded once. "Good. A unified front. They'll never expect that." Days blurred into drills. Nathaniel rehearsed his boardroom entrance again and again, each time stronger, steadier. I played the dissenting board members, throwing objections like knives that he parried with surgical precision. Patricia fed him legal statutes and procedural weapons, and he committed everyone to memory, practicing the reveal of evidence with the rhythm of a general plotting ambush. On the 10th run-through, he faltered, his cane slipping on polished marble. Instinct carried me. I caught him before he could fall. For a breathless second, we were close enough that my pulse was no longer my own. "You won't be there to catch me in the actual meeting," he murmured. "Yes, I will," I said, and we both knew I meant far more than balance or muscle support. The night before the board meeting, neither of us could sleep. I drifted through the mansion like a restless ghost until I found the door to his private terrace open. Nathaniel stood at the railing, not sitting, standing, his silhouette carved against the city's glow. Tomorrow those same city lights would witness either his resurrection or his ruin. "You should be resting," I said. "So should you." I joined him at the railing, the city unfurling below us like a living circuit board, pulsing with power. "Are you ready?" I asked. His storm-gray eyes met mine, steady, unyielding. "I've been ready since the day they assumed I was finished." He turned fully toward me then. "The real question is, are you ready to face him, William?" Tomorrow I'd see him again, watch him lie again, but this time I wouldn't be the one destroyed. "I'm ready." "Tell me something," Nathaniel said. "Why didn't you run when you saw me walking that first night?" "Because I recognized the look in your eyes," I answered. "The same one I had packing my life into boxes." His mouth curved, not in a smile, but in grim recognition. We were both hiding our capability, pretending to be broken so no one would expect anything from us. And now, he studied my face in the terrace light, steady, certain. "Now we stop pretending. After tomorrow, things will be different." "Everything's already different." He told me about the accident, about the months of darkness before I arrived, about how my refusal to pity him had salvaged something he thought was dead. I told him about foster care, about the walls Dorothy had carefully dismantled, about mistaking William for belonging. "You belong here," Nathaniel said simply. When he kissed me, it wasn't rushed or desperate. It was deliberate, calculated, like everything we'd planned. It tasted of redemption laced with revenge, something new and dangerous we'd built together. Tomorrow we would walk into that boardroom and destroy the people who had tried to destroy us. But tonight, high above the sleeping city, we were just two survivors who'd found each other in the wreckage. The next morning, the air outside Blackwood Industries carried a charge that prickled against my skin. As we stepped from the car, the glass facade of the skyscraper gleamed like a blade catching the first light of dawn. Nathaniel paused at the entrance, adjusting his Tom Ford suit one final time. His cane, mahogany polished to a mirror shine, silver handle glinting, was no longer for show. It was a weapon, and he wielded it like one. "Ready?" I asked, the portfolio of evidence clutched tight in my hands. "I've been ready for months," Nathaniel replied. His gaze locked onto mine, steady and unyielding. "Stay close. I want them to see you." The elevator ride to the 40th floor lasted only seconds, but each one stretched like hours. Other passengers instinctively shifted aside, sensing the predatory energy in Nathaniel's bearing. When the doors opened onto the executive floor, the receptionist froze. She had been told to expect a broken man in a wheelchair. Instead, Nathaniel Blackwood strode forward with deliberate power, each strike of his cane against marble echoing like a countdown to judgment. The boardroom doors stood open. Inside, 12 board members sat arrayed around the massive oval table. At the head, Nathaniel's rightful seat, Marcus Peaton sprawled with smug entitlement. Victoria gleamed beside him in midnight blue, diamonds at her throat, her posture polished and perfect. And to her left sat William, Armani-clad, medical files spread before him like stage props in a play, whose ending he had yet to realize was already written. The collective gasp when Nathaniel entered, walking, was almost a physical force. Marcus's face drained of color, his hand tightening on the armrest. Victoria's composure cracked, her hand flying reflexively to her throat. But it was William's reaction that nourished me. He half rose as though to flee, before his knees betrayed him, and he collapsed back into his chair, pallid and shaking. Nathaniel crossed the length of the room without haste, his cane striking in perfect rhythm with my heartbeat. Each step was an accusation, each movement a rebuke. He let them absorb it, every impossible stride of his supposedly paralyzed body, before stopping at the chairman's seat. His seat. "Ladies, gentlemen." His voice rang clear, rich with command. "I believe there's been some misunderstanding about my capacity." The word capacity sliced the air, a scalpel aimed directly at William. My ex-fiancé shrank into his tailored suit, the blood draining from his face. I stepped forward, placing the portfolio on the table with deliberate weight, the thud of it punctuating Nathaniel's words. "You're walking," Marcus choked, his voice betraying disbelief. An astute observation," Nathaniel said smoothly, lowering himself into the chair with measured grace. Then, with calculated cruelty, he turned his storm-gray eyes on William. "Though, according to Dr. Morris's medical assessment, that should be impossible. Isn't that right, doctor?" William's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping on dry land. "The reports, your paralysis, were documented by you," Nathaniel cut in, his voice sharp as broken glass. "Based on confidential medical information you were never authorized to access, much less share with outside parties." He opened the portfolio with deliberate calm, sliding out the first set of documents. "Shall we begin with your communications with Miss Peaton? These emails date back 4 months. Fascinating, considering your official consultation with her father began only 2 months ago." My eyes locked on Victoria as Nathaniel read aloud. Passages about her affair with William. Their plan to eliminate obstacles. The timeline proving my abandonment had been scheduled like surgery. Each word stripped her composure layer by layer until the flawless heiress looked raw, almost feral, with panic. "This proves nothing," Marcus snapped, but the hollowness in his voice betrayed him. "No?" Nathaniel's storm-gray eyes glittered. He drew out another set of papers. "Then perhaps we discuss the shell companies you registered in the Caymans, ready to receive my patents. Or maybe the stock trades conveniently timed to Dr. Morris's fabricated reports." The air crackled. That was when Patricia Coleman rose, her presence slicing through the boardroom like a blade. "What Mr. Blackwood has presented constitutes evidence of conspiracy, corporate espionage, multiple HIPAA violations, insider trading, and attempted theft of intellectual property," she declared, her voice ringing with authority. "You can't prove intent," Marcus said, his bravado fraying. Nathaniel smiled then, cold, surgical, merciless. "Actually," he said, lifting a tablet from the portfolio, "I can." He tapped the screen. Marcus Peaton's voice filled the room, deep and damning. "He's too broken to fight back. The board will side with active leadership. The crippled genius is ripe for harvesting." The recording played on, replaying their entire conversation from that morning in the mansion. Every damning word preserved by the security system they had mocked as paranoia, now their undoing. The boardroom was silent but for the sound of their own betrayal turned against them. "Recording without consent is illegal," Victoria snapped, but her voice trembled, the polished veneer cracking. "Not in my own home," Nathaniel replied, smooth as glass, "and certainly not when it captures a conspiracy to commit fraud." This was my moment. William had been avoiding my eyes, shrinking deeper into his suit. But now he looked up, desperate, reaching for me with words he thought might save him. "Linda, you don't understand the full picture." I rose slowly, palms pressing flat against the gleaming wood table, grounding myself in the cold truth. "I understand perfectly," I said, each syllable a blade. "You violated your oath, betrayed your patient's confidentiality, and dismantled our relationship just to climb into bed with the Peatons." Victoria's sharp inhale cut the air. Confirmation. They weren't only professional partners. Professionally and literally, it seems. My voice stayed steady, even as fire roared in my chest. "You traded me for an alliance that's now collapsing under you. So tell me, William, how does it feel to be the one abandoned? The board shifted, whispers spreading like sparks across dry tinder. Several members angled away from Marcus and Victoria, their loyalty already unraveling. This is absurd, Marcus barked, pushing back his chair with a screech of metal on marble. We're leaving. Sit down, Nathaniel commanded. The authority in his voice cracked through the room like a whip. He didn't need to raise it. Every syllable landed absolute. Patricia. Patricia Coleman stepped forward, her briefcase snapping open with a sound that echoed like a sprung trap. She laid down documents in front of Marcus, her tone calm, precise, lethal. Mr. Peaton, you have two options. Option 1, immediate withdrawal of all claims on Blackwood Industries, binding agreements barring any future contact with Mr. Blackwood or his companies, and your resignation from the hospital board. Option 2, we proceed with criminal charges. Criminal charges? William's voice cracked, strangled by panic. Corporate espionage, HIPAA violations, attempted theft of intellectual property, insider trading. Patricia listed them like a litany, each accusation heavier than the last. The FBI's white-collar division has already been briefed. They are awaiting the outcome of this meeting. You wouldn't dare, Victoria said, but her words were hollow, her bravado deflating. I would, Nathaniel replied, storm-gray eyes fixed on her like judgment made flesh. He tapped the documents once with his cane. Unless you sign these now. The boardroom fell silent except for the steady scratch of pens against paper. One by one they signed. Marcus with a hand trembling from rage, Victoria with manicured fingers that finally betrayed her fragility. William's signature looked less like ink on a page and more like an obituary. His own. They filed out, stripped of their power, their polish, their illusions. At the door, William lingered, eyes hollow, voice pitched low in a final grasp for menace. This isn't over, he whispered. I met his gaze, calm and unflinching. Yes, it is. You ended it 3 weeks ago. I'm just returning the favor. The door clicked shut, sealing him out of the world he thought he owned. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was clean, like inhaling after years of suffocation. Nathaniel remained seated, his hand finding mine beneath the table. His fingers interlaced with quiet certainty as he addressed the stunned board. Ladies, gentlemen, I believe we have a company to rebuild. The vote to reinstate his full authority was unanimous, almost desperate. No one wanted the stain of the Peatons' coup on their record. As they filed out, offering apologies and murmured pledges of loyalty, Patricia Coleman approached with a razor-sharp smile. The Peaton assets are already frozen pending investigation, she reported. And as for Dr. Morris, he won't practice medicine in this state again. Perhaps not anywhere. The words should have tasted like victory. Instead, I felt only a strange hollowness where rage had lived for weeks. Nathaniel seemed to sense it. His thumb traced gentle circles against my palm, grounding me. Come with me, he said softly once Patricia departed. There's something I want to show you. His office loomed high above the city, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view so vast it felt like the world itself had been laid out for conquest. But that wasn't what he wanted me to see. From his desk drawer, he drew out a set of architectural plans and spread them across the polished surface. The same surface where, minutes earlier, we had dismantled our enemies. The east wing of the estate, he explained, pointing to the designs. 12,000 square feet, currently unused. I want to turn it into something that matters. The plans revealed a rehabilitation center, state-of-the-art therapy pools, treatment rooms, advanced equipment. But my breath caught at the name at the top of the blueprint, the Blackwood Carter Rehabilitation Center. Your spinal cord stimulation technology, I whispered, awe threading through my voice. You want to make it available to patients who can't afford treatment. I want to make it available to everyone, Nathaniel corrected, his gaze steady, intent. But I need someone to run the clinical site, someone who knows recovery isn't only about the body, but about refusing to let circumstance define you. He slid a velvet box across the desk. My hands shook as I opened it, bracing for jewelry. Instead, nestled inside was a single silver key. Full partnership, Nathaniel said. Equity stake. Your name on the door beside mine. You'll run clinical operations while I lead technology development. Nathaniel. My throat tightened. I'm not qualified for this. I'm just a nurse. You're the only one who saw me when I was invisible, he cut in, his voice low but fierce. You stayed when everyone else ran. You understood what I needed when I couldn't even admit it to myself. That's all the qualification I need. The key was light in my palm, but it carried the weight of an entire future. Not the one I'd planned with William. Safe, scripted, suffocating, but a future vast enough to terrify me, vast enough to thrill me. Yes, I whispered. And when Nathaniel smiled, it remade his face entirely. No longer the storm-gray man hiding behind armor, but someone reborn. 6 months passed in a blur of dust and blueprints, of interviews and installations. The Blackwood Carter Rehabilitation Center rose from paper into stone and steel, a dream solidifying into rooms designed for dignity, hope, and recovery. Dorothy Martinez was my first hire, brought in to head our patient advocacy program. Her decades of experience, her steady warmth, were exactly what the center needed. When I handed her the offer letter, she wept, saying she'd always known I was meant for something extraordinary. And for the first time in years, I believed her. The ribbon-cutting ceremony drew medical leaders from across the country. Cameras flashed, reporters scribbled, and the hum of anticipation filled the courtyard. I stood beside Nathaniel, who now walked with only the faintest limp, his hand steady on the oversized scissors poised over the silver ribbon. The Blackwood Carter Rehabilitation Center represents more than medical innovation, Nathaniel told the crowd, his voice carrying over the microphones. It represents the belief that our worst moments don't define us, that from destruction, we can build something beautiful. His hand found mine as we cut the ribbon together. The applause rose in a thunderous wave, but it felt far away, muffled, as if the only sound that mattered was the quiet certainty of his fingers laced with mine. Later, in my office, the morning paper sat folded on my desk. The society pages carried William and Victoria's wedding announcement, a rushed courthouse ceremony, a hollow echo of what had once been mine. The article noted the Peaton fortune had evaporated in legal fees and frozen assets. William's loyalty, it seemed, had finally come with too steep a price tag. I felt no anger, no triumph, only a thin, cool pity for Victoria, who had mistaken betrayal for ambition. You've become who you were meant to be, Dorothy whispered when she embraced me after my speech. And for the first time in my life, I didn't argue. I believed her. That same afternoon, our first patient arrived. Jaime, 22, a motorcycle crash survivor with eyes still raw from disbelief. I watched Nathaniel kneel beside her chair, explaining the technology he'd built, mapping futures she hadn't thought possible. In that moment, I saw the man he'd been before the accident. The brilliant mind, the relentless heart, the leader reshaping lives not through wealth, but through will. 3 weeks later, we walked the private beach below the estate at sunset. Autumn painted the horizon in amber and rose, the tide curling cool around our ankles. Nathaniel stopped where the surf kissed the sand, turning toward me with something unreadable in his storm-gray eyes. When he pulled a small box from his pocket, my heart stuttered once, then twice, as if trying to keep pace with the ocean. "I'm not asking you to marry me because I need you," Nathaniel said, opening the box. Inside lay a simple sapphire ring, its deep blue catching the fading light. Nothing ornate, nothing heavy with someone else's history. Certainly not like William's grandmother's heirloom, which had felt less like a promise and more like a shackle. I'm asking because I've learned the best revenge against those who tried to break us is to build something they could never imagine, never touch, never be. Build it with me, Linda. Not from desperation, not from convenience, but from choice. I didn't wait for him to slide the ring on. I took it myself, slipped it onto my finger, and knew instantly it belonged there. When I kissed him, the ocean was our only witness. Waves erased our footprints as we walked back up the beach, leaving no trace of where we'd been, only where we were going. A month later, in the heart of the facility we had built, I stood beside Nathaniel as Jaime took her first unassisted steps. Her parents wept openly. Her younger sister captured every second on her phone. This was what had risen from the ashes, not just a rehabilitation center, but a sanctuary where people who thought they were broken could discover they were never broken at all. My phone buzzed. An unknown number, William's name, a preview of words about mistakes, about wanting to talk. I deleted it without opening the rest. Instead, I reached for Nathaniel's hand as our next patient arrived. We had both been discarded by people who believed we were disposable. William had thrown me away for ambition dressed as love. The Pedons had tried to bury Nathaniel while he was still breathing, but from that wreckage, we built something indestructible. A love born of revenge, yes, but remade into purpose, into healing, into a life that belonged only to us.